Hi, this is Dave with the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast. On the evening we recorded the following podcast, we had some technical difficulties. We lost Matt to a flood, and our guest's audio file was corrupted. We felt that the content was important enough to go ahead and publish it. Please forgive us for the poor audio quality.
You're listening to Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong, all on Georgia Radio Network.
Welcome to your favorite hour of the week, the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast, episode 34. With me, as always, Matt Lowe.
What's up?
The busiest woman in Georgia media, Jessica Szilagyi.
Hello.
And we have a special guest, Allison Feliciano, candidate for House District 19.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. How was everybody's week?
Busy.
Good. Just bracing for the hurricane.
Bracing for the hurricane. Now everybody knows what day we're recording
Yeah,
on.
that came last week.
Hopefully I'm still here when this airs. Yes.
Right?
Allison, you've been busy knocking on doors, spreading the
Knocking
word.
on doors, shaking hands, kissing the babies, waving signs, all of that. It's been a bunch of fun.
Are you having fun with it?
You know what? I am. I mean, there are the moments when I get, flip the bird and cursed at and things like that. That doesn't seem so much fun, but I just have to laugh, and I just yell back, I love you too, whether you like it or not.
Right.
So, I mean, with anything, just because the body begins to break down, you get tired, but I'm still very, very excited.
Well, we're excited to talk about your campaign, but Dave has some headlining topics for us to kind of break the ice with. So.
Well, the first story is the city made trick-or-treating illegal for anyone over the age of 12.
Boo.
And this is this story is by one of my favorite writers, Kat Temp, especially from the libertarian standpoint. Matt, as a father of 15 kids, when do you cut them off from trick-or-treating?
I don't.
Well, I guess that's how you feed them that day.
Right? Yeah. No, man, I don't know. There's so many other things that a kid could be out doing that, man, if they want to, dress up in a silly costume and go knock on doors and get some candy, that's probably better than keying my car or egging my house or rolling my yard or, stealing my TV, whatever. I mean, I can think of 100 other things that they could do that would just be worse. So let them trick or treat.
Well, Jessica, as our millennial, do your people ever go outside anymore at all?
I don't think so. I think most everyone I think we're supposed to do order candy by an app and have it delivered. I think that's the new thing. But
Right,
in all
Amazon.
seriousness, this is so ridiculous. And, I think kids age out of trick-or-treating anyway. So, and it's not that many years after 12 or 13. So what's the big deal?
Right.
I mean, I think I stopped trick-or-treating in 6th grade. And then my friends started having parties, or there were get-togethers at school, or whatever sport we were doing. And there were other activities. But if a kid wants to be a kid for one more year, I mean, let them be kids.
And Allison, is this really the best use of government time?
No. You know what? I think it's actually ridiculous. My children are older, 18 and 22, so I have a different perspective. But I just feel like, just kind of what Jessica just said, is you're only a kid, at least in my perspective, for 18 years. And, once you have to start doing this adulting thing, it's not always so much fun. So, I mean, go and fix some infrastructure, go and do some, fight real crime and let the kids get some, for goodness sake. That's just how I feel.
Well,
Exactly.
we've
Right.
always had a policy: if you show up in costume, you get candy. I don't care how old you
Absolutely.
are. If you show up in just a T-shirt and a sack in your hand, that's basically door-to-door panhandling.
I'm showing up in a mini skirt and hooker boots.
Again,
Yep.
wax your legs this time.
No way. Not waxing my chest either.
You know what's so wild though about this story is that this isn't the only city that's done it. There are, I think, 5 or 6 other laws or other cities in Virginia that have done the same thing. And then this article on the National Review, which we're referencing and we'll put on our Facebook page, talks about how there are other cities that have required kids to have an adult with them. I mean, in our neighborhood, our parents would be on the street, but what does that even mean to have a parent with you? They have to go to the door with you? I mean, our parents would sit on a curb in the middle of the street and we'd all kind of go from house to house and come back and then move to the next street. And then I think at 11 or 12, we were off doing it by ourselves. I mean, it's this whole mentality that parents aren't capable of raising their own kids. And if you continue to let them inch away at it, the line is just going to get further away from the parent and closer to the state.
Well, I know growing up in South Florida, because the houses are so close together, that we were gone. It was, I had a watch, and I knew what time to be home, and I was gone. And we would go, and we'd come back with pillowcases full of candy.
Absolutely.
And I know that was a different time, but actually I didn't live that far from where Adam Walsh disappeared. But there were parents around, and any parent back then, any parent in the neighborhood could beat your butt.
Yep.
So there
Right.
wasn't as much mischief. I mean, there was bullying. A big kid would go and take whatever good candy you had, but that's kids kind of learn how to sort out their own social problems that way, not having a helicopter parent.
Right. And I think I'm a bit older than all of you, so yeah, our parents didn't go with us, and I grew up in a big city, and we just would go in the complex where we lived, and there was plenty of apartments, and we knew how to behave because, like you said, David, our neighbors would be like, your mama, blah 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 blah, and whack if they had to.
Right.
And sure, by
Well-
16, 17, or 18, I was already going to keggers. So let them be a kid. Let them not do the stupid stuff I did. Sorry, Matt.
Now, I was going to say, I grew up in a Pentecostal church, so we didn't do a whole lot of trick-or-treating. I can only think of just a handful of 1 or 2 times maybe that we went trick-or-treating. Everything else was these really stupid fall festivals at the church.
Tell us how you really feel.
Man, well, I mean, look, I can kind of understand where they might be coming from, but I mean, look, if you're not out, drawing pentagrams and sacrificing virgins, it's you're not worshiping the devil on his holiday or whatever. So I don't know, it's stupid. The whole go trick or treat, dress up like witches or goblins or hookers or whatever with your kids and go.
So it was no candy for you, just rattlesnakes?
Right. No, man. Actually, my church didn't do snakes because there would have been a Matt's mom shaped hole in the back of the church. Like I told y'all last week, man, that woman is deathly afraid of snakes.
So a la Wile E. Coyote exit.
Exactly.
Now we've got Sarah Riggs Amico. really hard. I'm not sure Governor Kemp will make it 4 years in the Pound Me Too era. As our expert at being sexually harassed, Matthew,
Right.
you know, it doesn't get much uglier than to third party accuse a political opponent. So,
Well, just I think worth mentioning here is that she's a candidate for lieutenant governor, which we've kind of talked about at length, and she was on the campaign trail talking about the importance of the office and saying how undervalued it is, because if the governor's office is vacated or the governor is removed from office, this person is the person who will take their place. And in saying that, she was saying that it's important to elect her and not Jeff Duncan, because if Brian Kemp is our governor, she doesn't think he will make it 4 years. So it's not just, someone who's already in office. It's somebody who could possibly take the place, who's, as some perceived it, she's banking on the idea that Kemp's not going to make it and she'll be our governor or something like that. So carry on. I just wanted to interject that.
I said, as a candidate, do you view statements like this as dirty pool?
No, I've actually I've seen Sarah speak in person, and I've also gotten to just get a general gist of her personality. In some senses, very much I do agree with her. I don't, I'll be bold enough to say I don't think Kemp is qualified to be our governor, and I don't think that he has the temperament. And so, nor, I totally feel that most of the things in politics is 90% common sense. 90% common sense. And I just don't feel that he has what it takes to take Georgia out from where it is to where it could be and where it needs to be. So, with some of his thoughts or way of thinking in this hashtag Me Too movement, I don't think he would make it. But
so I totally understand where you're coming from the perspective that she reasonableness and level-headed and of who she is as a person, because I had the opportunity to spend a good amount of time with her and interviewing her, and I really liked her. As a candidate, I liked her views and I liked her personality. But as a female and a moderate, I was bothered by her comments because he hasn't done anything to justify saying he won't make it. I mean, his own behavior has not... He hasn't tried to sweep anything under the rug. He hasn't been accused of anything. And I just felt like it was a little preemptive to say that, whether you agree with his politics or not, and you're banking on him being removed from office as a Democrat or a progressive or whoever may be doing that, if he is elected, I understand that you wouldn't be pleased with a Kemp governorship. But I am concerned that we are assuming that he wouldn't be a good governor with a combination of the fact that you don't like his policies and you think that, not you, but people think that he is going to be involved in some sort of sexual assault or sexual harassment scandal.
Right. Well, I would like to think not. And thus far, right, no one has come forward, because you would think that was the case, unless they were paid off. But I would like to think not. But the fact of who he likes to align himself with, my mother and my grandmother used to say, "Show me your friends and I'll tell you who you are." And so, who you align yourself with tells me a lot of what your mind character is.
Are you referring to
I am.
President Trump? So, I guess, do you feel like her comments are are justified? Or I mean, understandably, if you're already supporting her, which I am. I mean, I'm a fan and had considered voting for her myself. You know, you probably agree with a lot more of her platform and her positions than I do, but do you feel like her comment is justified just because of President Trump's endorsement, or do you feel like it goes further than that?
And we don't know maybe what she knows or what she doesn't know. But was it justified? And we also don't know what brought the comment on. So, of course, when any sort of article is written, it's written with the headline, I click on it, right? I mean, let's just be honest. And so we don't know what was beforehand, is it justified? If I were to hear the whole conversation, maybe I would say yes, but we're not privy to that. Just for what I've seen of him and all the people that kind of flock to him, he flocks around, they all seem to have the same posture. Let's just say that.
So, I totally agree with you about. I actually wrote the article the one that we're referencing here, and I was concerned when I was sent the clip because I was like, what if this is just, is it taken out of context, or we're only getting a minute and a half. The clip is from Fetcher News of her at a candidate interview, but I actually was, after the article was published, found out that she's been saying this since June. It was quoted in the Brunswick News, and which I was unaware of as well. And so it's a policy position that she's taking when she's, I guess, explaining the importance of the office. I think especially with Casey Cagle and Governor Deal, we never really thought about the fact that Casey Cagle could be our governor in the event of Deal being gone. I mean, I think we all prayed that would never happen, but we never really thought about it. And so she's really using that as a I guess a leg of her platform. And so I was really surprised to know that I know that the Me Too movement has certainly been building over several months, going on probably a year and a half now, but I was just surprised that it was such a pillar of her campaign so early on. So I guess as a candidate, where does the Me Too movement fall into your platform, and how are you trying to incorporate it or get women involved in the process, or is it something you're discussing when you're knocking on doors? What kind of interaction are you having about it?
That's a great question, and I would tell you I didn't know that she had been bringing this up since June either. So thanks for that information.
So when I do knock on doors, I do that. The family's concern or a person's concern, and it has come up once in a while. As a survivor, sexual abuse myself, I do feel that I am glad that men and women are coming out and saying Me Too, and this has to be a conversation that people can have and have it be conscious conversation, because when you're a victim of, whether it's assault, whether it's abuse, rape, whether you're molested, all of that is trauma, and we have to let this conversation be had and not hide it and brush it under the rug anymore. And so I do want victims' voices to be heard, and heard loud, because when you go through trauma, then it lends to other issues that fall into the mental health space and things like that, which we can get to. So I just feel like it is an important topic. I don't bring it up, but if it's brought up to me, I listen, I embrace, I empathize. And, again, I'm not sure why she has brought this up so early, back in June, but she may know some things you don't know.
Sure.
And I would have them find out.
I would guess she brought it up back in June because she thought Casey Cagle was going to be the opponent.
Okay.
That, from a political standpoint, and given Cagle's past, no one was expecting how many counties?
157 out of 159 voted no to Casey Cagle.
Wow.
I love it that you've got that stat in your hip pocket anytime his name comes up. We have only a few more months to really hammer him while he's a public figure.
Well, it's worth every minute. But I don't want to harp on this, but I do have one more question in this vein for you, Allison. I struggle myself because, I've had my own experiences and I have friends who've had their own experiences as well. And I'm conflicted when I hear stories come out in a political context. Like, I go back and forth. I understand why someone would say they want to come out when someone has an opportunity to rise to power because they don't want, they may know something and they don't want those people to rise to power. Then on this other side of the coin, I'm like, ugh, why are they politicizing this? This is not a political matter. Sexual assault, sexual abuse, they're not political things. They shouldn't be partisan. So I really have this internal battle. And what is your perspective on that? I mean, how do you sound like a victim's advocate for sure, and you want victims to have a voice, which I think most reasonable people do. But do you feel like a voice can be kind of squashed by partisanship or?
Well, you know what, and it is not political, correct. However, when someone is looking to serve in any public office, be it from local to federal, they have this in their past as the aggressor. It leads to character. And whether someone did it 36 years ago or they did it last year, it leads to character deep down inside. This still needs to be a conversation because although sexual, assault should not be partisan either, but that's why we have now Amendment 4, Marsy's Law, because the victim should be given a voice, and the victim should be told when their predator is going to be set free or hasn't even been, put behind bars yet. They should. And so while it's not political in a sense, there is a space for it.
Understood. Well, sorry, Dave, for getting so far off the agenda, but
no. And here's the thing: you don't get to assume because somebody's a male they're an aggressor. When we do that, especially what's been happening lately, is you downgrade the status of every man in your life, and you don't get to just decide that, hey, because he's a dude, there's probably going to be somebody comes out of the woodwork and do you want me or a guy that throws a fastball to go to become the governor? Which I'm not sure if Amico can throw a curveball, but I know Duncan could at one point. But she will show up to interview.
That's true. Sarah Riggs Amico did sit down for an interview with me, and Jeff Duncan declined. Just putting that out there. So she does stand by her opinions, which, regardless of whether you agree with them, I will always respect someone who will stand firm, and when they take heat for them, dig in. So.
Sure, and I just wish it could stay issues based. Now I'm not defending Kemp, other than I was an ABC guy, anybody but Cagle, and I have no idea. But the fact that I have no idea gives him a presumption of innocence that Amico's not giving him.
Interesting.
That's fair.
Okay, we kind of say more than. Oh, go ahead.
That's a fair comment to make.
Well, we're going to continue on from a story we more than touched on because I can't shut my mouth last week. A gender-fluid boy assaulted a girl in the bathroom. This was on All on Georgia last week. The story is still up there. This is in City of Decatur. Little girl goes to the restroom where she encounters a gender-fluid 5-year-old, and she's 5 years old, where she was assaulted, and she went and told her parents. Jessica, do you want to elaborate on the story since you are the All on Georgia person?
Sure. Well, I didn't write this story, but I can certainly help elaborate on it. Basically, the Department of Education Civil Rights Division is investigating this because they're saying that, the school didn't take proper precautions to protect the little girl, and then they're also upset with, or the family is upset with how it was handled after. And they're saying basically by allowing this little boy who identified as a girl to use the girls' restroom where this happened, basically created an environment, for this kind of incident to occur. And we touched on it last week in the sense that the Obama era transgender restroom policy was issued and then kind of repealed under President Trump, and now it's up to local school districts, and they all have different policies. And so I think it'll be interesting to see as a state where this goes. If after this, if we see a lawsuit and changes to their policy, if we see some sort of statewide initiative to at least at a minimum, I guess, set a bar of standard. I think a lot of school districts that deal with this are trying to have the student use a faculty restroom or maybe a family restroom that suits everyone, so that you don't have mixed issues, or unsupervised, I guess, would be a problem with it too. But Allison, what's your perspective on this? I mean, do you think this is something the legislature should take up? And if so, how do you legislate something like this?
Even when this came about under Obama, I'm really, really torn, because on one hand, when someone identifies as whatever gender they do, you certainly don't want to tell them no, or, make them feel other than they feel. However, not everyone does feel that way, and I just kind of thinking, although it might be difficult, I just feel that there needs to be maybe a separate bathroom at this time, because, whether he would, the child that assaulted or whatever he did to the little girl, he could have done that to a little boy in a boy's bathroom. You just never know. And so to speculate that wouldn't have happened, I mean, you know what I'm saying? And so I understand why both sets of parents would be concerned, but this is still a very serious issue, because I don't want to pin down the rights of people, but then you also have the overall safety. And I know this is going to be a long conversation in the Capitol. This is something that you can easily square away.
So would you like it to happen at the state level, or should it be left up to the local districts?
I think that I think it should be a state level issue, because we have 159 counties in Georgia, so many different school districts, that is,
yes,
there's just too much left up for speculation. I definitely think that this should be done at the state level.
What do you think, Dave?
Well, my belief, that which governs least governs best. Look, I don't know what a gender-neutral 5-year-old is. When I was 5 years old, I self-identified as an astronaut. Doesn't mean that I was qualified to go hop on the space shuttle. Body dysmorphia is a really hard thing to deal with, and ask anybody who's ever tried to deal with an anorexic. They feel on the inside that they're fat. You're like, no, but you're 80 pounds. No, but I'm fat. And it's a very similar situation. So bending the rules of society for a less than 1% of the population is insane. Creating new bathrooms or anything else is insane. Now, if you want to give it, and I said last week, that principal, okay, we go back. The principal's response to the mother's complaint was to send DFAX the day after Christmas to the home. They banging on the door very early and accused the mother of creating this situation and brought the hammer of government to try to shield, and I think the principal is herself, and I can't remember, I'm not reading the article at this second, and used the hammer of government to punish someone from coming forward to report sexual assault. And I said last week, when I read this story, I was rolling my eyes, because at 5 years old, I didn't think anything sexual. I mean, I was, more worried about candy and riding my bike and everything else. But after watching this mother in her interview, this is a woman who's tormented. This is a woman who's very upset, and then she does not come off like someone who's looking for a check. I think she wanted a response where we're going to get rid of that student. We're going to put him in some sort of counseling for juvenile delinquents, and we're going to change the policy somehow to accommodate these students that need a separate bathroom. But that wasn't the response. The response was very much dig the heels in and blame the parent.
Which is an interesting perspective when you're dealing with a
Absolutely.
5-year-old. I mean,
It is a difficult conversation to have, particularly with children. As an adult, if I want to shave my legs and call myself Shirley, that's fine. But there's no forced association with me, and that's one of Matt's terms. If he was here, when he talks about bullying, is these kids have forced association because they have no choice. The law tells them they have to go to school and where to go to school for the most part. So they have to interact. And if nature calls, and which for a 5-year-old not having a giant bladder, they don't have a choice to go, you know what, I'm going to go hit Arby's down the street and use the bathroom there. They have to use the one at school.
right. It definitely complicates it, at school. I think private businesses almost have it easier in this sense because they can they've adjusted so easily. They just put in single restroom stalls, and that kind of handled most of the problems, I think. But schools, you've got funding problems, you've got demographic problems where some things are tolerated better than others, and it's one of I don't know how to best handle it, but if it's going to be handled, I do believe that it should be handled, I think, at the state level at this point. Just otherwise, we're going to just see lawsuit after lawsuit. But
do away with public schools, let private schools, and as a parent, you can decide to go to send your kids to the school with a policy that matches your values.
So, well, Allison, I really want to talk about your campaign and your platform for office. You were our first Democratic contender on our show, so
Yay!
We're really
Thank
excited for you
you.
to share your views. But I guess first, do you want to share a little bit about what compelled you to run for office? Because as a writer and somebody who reports on the people who run for office, I can't imagine ever wanting to do that. So I'd love to know why you decided 2018 was your year to run for State House.
Sure. Well, I come from a family of service. My dad was in the military 25 plus years, brothers, cousins, my grandfathers, uncles. My late husband was a Gulf War veteran, and my future husband, 20 years in the Navy, so can't get these military men out of my life. But also, it just, my parents as a whole always served the community. I've served in the community, in the school, in church, and it's just part of who I am. And so back in 2014, I had helped some friends that were running, one for State House, one for Senator, and I began to just talk about local issues and what I was seeing
And then someone said, you should run for mayor. Then I was Cobb County, and I thought they were crazy. I was like, get out. How are you doing this? But it haunted me, and it wouldn't let me go. And so I did. I ran for mayor of Powder Springs in 2015. I didn't win, but I did well enough to be kept involved in the scope of politics here in Georgia at a state level. And then beginning of this year, I was looking at I was happy to be back in Paulding County, and I was looking at what we had going on here, and I thought a new voice and a new perspective was needed. And so
Awesome. Well, what 3 issues or policy positions do you feel like are your most compelling? Like, what really drives your platform?
Well, I've been an entrepreneur for over 20 years, and so, definitely business within job creation through, strategic investment and working, of course, on infrastructure here to make that happen, to bring the companies not only just to Georgia, but most importantly to House District 19. So that's one. I would definitely say healthcare, also mental illness, and that kind of ties into the healthcare, even the justice system as well. So I can talk on any of those topics and more. So let me know what you guys have been hearing that people are concerned about.
Well, I definitely kind of want to dive into the healthcare aspect of things, just because obviously it is and has been for the last several years one of the more polarizing for the parties. Even in Georgia, how we approach things. So, and I also want to make sure we have time to get into mental health, because I think we've talked about that a lot on this show, and at the end of the show we just say, still don't know what to do, still don't know how to fix it, still don't know how to help everyone. So first, why don't you kind of talk about your platform and how that kind of relates to House District 19, because of course it's different all over the state.
Right. Well, I will tell you that I am definitely in favor for Medicaid expansion. And I mean, there's nearly 500,000 Georgians that need this, especially our seniors. I call them prime timers. I don't call them seniors, but well, you know what I feel like? If you can get up when you want, go to bed when you want, do whatever you want, whenever you want, that's prime time living. So our prime timers have worked and have poured into the system for all these years, and to get, some people, aging is not happening well, and so they need extra services, and that Medicare or whatever healthcare coverage they have is not providing. So that's one. And then in House District 9, we are considered a bit rural, and so to save the hospitals, but also most importantly to generate over 50,000 jobs that should happen in the state of Georgia. That's really, really important. Also, under the Affordable Care Act, to make those premiums more affordable as well, especially for self-employed Georgians. And if we can do that and save them money there, as well as with some other tax breaks for them, we can also see some more job creation that way. When we get into healthcare, stronger mental health and substance abuse networks, I think you tie that to how all of that affects the community as a whole. All of these pieces of the puzzle connect. And so we can't just focus on one thing. It will connect to other areas. As a woman, people are surprised when they hear me say this, but I am pro-life.
but I do not feel like I can, or I should legislate that for a woman. And so I do, and I am in favor of protection of all of women's health issues. And then, just the increased support for people with disabilities, or, chronic illnesses. I do have a child that has sickle cell, and I would like to see some things happen that would help people with chronic pain issues like what she deals with. I think that Georgia took a step as it pertains to medical marijuana, but they're still far from having that make sense to treat people. And so it's okay to have it, but if you can't get it, then that doesn't make sense to me.
So you brought up a lot of really good points no, it's fine. I mean, when you talk about healthcare, it's not something you can just churn out in a sentence and then move on. So I totally understand. You won't get any pushback about expanded medical marijuana on this show. I don't think. I think everyone here is a vocal supporter of access for families and people in need, maybe even recreational. But you talked about more people having access to care with Medicaid expansion. How would you respond? Because I live in South Georgia, so we have rural hospitals. I mean, the ruralest of the rural. Some of them don't even have emergency rooms, and they're always looking to add ways to generate money, like whether it be physical therapy or outpatient stuff, just because the Medicaid and the Medicare reimbursements are so low, and that is what has caused a lot of them to shut their doors. And so I guess, how do you justify saying that Medicare or Medicaid expansion, would provide more access when in a lot of communities, people with Medicaid can't get doctors or can't get care even if they're covered?
Well, the biggest thing is that with this expansion, we as a state have been turning away over $3 billion in funding that we would get. And so that's $8 million a day. And so the fact is that then we could pay doctors and healthcare workers in those areas that you're talking about to stay there. We could keep those hospitals open. So I mean, it breaks my heart when I hear of families having to come from South Georgia up to, the Atlanta area just to get treatment. That doesn't make sense to me. And so with this expansion comes funding. So the funding then would open those doors of care from, your primary care doctors to the cares of, whether it's cardiac or pulmonary or oncology. It would spread the gamut. And so when you're turning away $3 billion a year, I mean, that's horrific.
Yeah, but that $3 billion a year is not going directly to doctors, nurses, and hospitals unless you're talking about a state-run healthcare system.
Well, you know what? That you are right. However, if we work and see, I'm all about making sure. Like, that's why I was very disappointed back in 2007 and 2008 when the banks were bailed out, right? Because they didn't do with the money that they should have to help the homeowners that were affected. Same here. This it would take someone to make sure. Well, all of us that would be in office to make sure that these funds are going to where they need to be, and to keep the people accountable for the spending of the funds, and to make sure that it goes to the end user, being the patients all over Georgia. So, I'm all about accountability, and I will call a spade when I see it.
Yeah, well, government-run healthcare can be summed up with the VA. The Atlanta VA is now ranked, I think, it's in the bottom 10.
As it should be. It's horrible.
Yeah, Exactly. But that is what government-run healthcare looks like. That's what we get. And your husband and your previous husband had to experience also is it's not worth going to the VA. Mm-hmm. It's just not worth it unless you have no other option. I know people who go to Chattanooga instead of go to the VA in Atlanta because it's awful. And it's not lack of funding. It's not lack of political willpower. It's what happens when you put bureaucrats
Correct.
in charge of healthcare. I can tell you my premiums have done nothing but go up since the Affordable Care Act. And a great quote that I heard before it passed was, if you think healthcare is expensive now, wait till it's free. It's nothing but a redistribution of wealth. To take that money, philosophically, I oppose that money being out there at all. All this is just taking money from other taxpayers in other parts of the country to go put money into rural Georgia, where a free market solution allows people to pay for their own health care.
Well, that was one of my questions for Allison was, are you concerned that, we'll draw more money for Medicaid, with the state dollars and the $3 billion, but healthcare costs will continue to rise, and we'll be right back in this position in several years. Do you worry about that, or is it let's address immediate need and then work it out as we go down the road?
And I am concerned because I have, I've heard that over and over again here in our district of, how the Affordable Care Act, either has not helped or the price is so high that it's like paying another mortgage, right? Or that it has helped, but I really wish that this was just kind of one of those easy things to fix. But what I would say is let's see where it is working, whether that's here in the States or overseas, and what's working that makes sense, then let's draw from it. And then what's not working, why keep on going, over and over and over again? And then to your point, Dave, about the VA, I will tell you this. I advocated for my late husband. I went to every appointment. I questioned everything that they did for every doctor. I did all the paperwork. When you have people running the VA that have never served, okay, it doesn't make sense to me because then you don't understand the need. And I advocated, and unfortunately, his death was still deemed a suicide. So I will fight to the very end to make sure that not only this VA here in Atlanta, but across this nation, they have the right people in leadership, because we're losing too many of our veterans who gave of themselves for us to come back to be homeless. So they go fight a war and then they come back to fight another war. So on both sides, healthcare for our veterans and just other services that they need, but healthcare for citizens. There's gotta be. I cannot sit back and go, well, no, it's just, it's a lost cause, because then there'll always be a lost cause. There's got to be a way to make this work, to make it affordable, and to get good care. Because just because it's, not everything that's cheap is good, right? And not everything that's good is cheap. And so there's got to be a way. But people have to be willing to reach across the aisle and get out of their own pockets and think about people other than themselves or their friends.
So would you consider yourself, how would you identify yourself and your political ideology? I don't want you to box yourself in and as this is a campaign promise or anything, but I see myself as a small L libertarian. I lean conservative, but I'm definitely socially liberal. Like, how would you identify with those?
I come from a Democratic family, and I am proud to be from a Democratic family. But I'm actually kind of right down the middle. I don't agree with everything on either side.
but I will also fight for the rights of all people. And, just like I told someone the other day who was, kind of wagging her finger at me, or her and her husband, because I am a Democrat, and, Democrats are largely pro-choice. And she was like, abortion is wrong. And I mean, she just was really, they were coming at me. And I just said, listen, I would not have an abortion, but I will not legislate that for someone else. I said, but it's in the same vein, you would want me to fight for you, against the notion that because this one person chose to kill whatever X amount of people with that assault rifle, that all guns should go away. And I don't agree with that either. I do believe that we all have the right to, have guns, and I just think that there should be common sense laws that go with that.
And what would those common sense
yes,
laws be?
You opened the door perfectly for us, because that was my next question as well. So please explain.
I had an issue with that a young man who could not buy a beer could buy an assault rifle and the ammunition for it. I mean, so
I agree. We need to lower the drinking age.
And so,
no, I'm
really?
dead ass serious. When I was 19 years old, someone handed me an M60. It's not an age issue. I bought my. First of all, there are no assault rifles. They're modern sporting rifles. Because they are black and plastic does not make them any more lethal than one that's wood grained. If you reach the age of majority at 18, you should have every right and privilege of a citizen of this country. Now, if we want to raise the age of majority to 21, that's fine. It also means you can't join the military until you're
Correct.
21, which would kill recruiting.
Absolutely.
Because you need to be a grown adult to raise your right hand. So the same argument that you can sign up and go die for your country, but you can't buy a beer, is the same thing.
I
So
agree.
I can go off and I can go die for my country, but I can't protect my family and buy a pistol at home.
You know what, Dave? I totally agree with you. Is that I am old enough to vote, but I can't buy beer. I get it. And so that I do believe that we do need background checks. I mean, we could go back and forth of what that could do. I just feel like right now the system is broken, and but I'm certainly not for taking people's guns away. I actually, although I haven't yet held a gun in my hand, but that's something that we are planning to do, because we would like to have our own guns and our own home. And so I'm all for you being able to protect your family and protect yourself in a common sense way.
Well, that's not the point of the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is designed to make the government fear the people. Remember, farmers with pitchforks and hunting rifles formed together and defeated the world's most powerful military. And that is what was on the minds of those individuals when they sat down and they chose the words "shall not be infringed," because they just fought a war over a bunch of people coming over in boats and trying to confiscate our weapons. And they were, when people say, well, they didn't mean this, they didn't mean that, individuals owned cannons at the time, and that's where the colonial cannons came from, were personal collections, particularly those who owned shipping services like Hancock and people like that owned cannon to defend their cargo, or plunder in the case of Hancock to some degree, accused of being a smuggler and a pirate. But that's the point of the law, is not to hunt, it's not to protect in case of an intruder, although that certainly helps, but it's to make sure that the government always fears me, the citizen.
So where are you on 3D guns? Because I am so frustrated with the conversation of, it's probably one of the only times ever that the Second Amendment and the First Amendment are with the publication of the 3D gun plans, and the restrictions on that. It's probably one of the only times they've been overlapped. So where does your position
Now,
on
3D
3D
guns,
guns?
I think I know I read an article. Are those guns that like they make out of plastic?
Yeah, so they have these 3D printers now that you just put your dimensions into the computer and it prints out. You could print a cup, you could print,
Right.
a pen, a gun. They don't operate like real guns.
So they just look like real guns.
But, I mean, Dave, can you clarify? I
Yeah,
mean,
okay.
The ammunition would be a problem.
No, you can. They're essentially single-use firearms. The
Right.
3D printed. It is perfectly legal to build your own firearm. You can go, if you own a mill or whatever you want to do, you can build your own firearm. You may not sell it. You can't go into the firearm manufacturing business. What this guy did, who's a huge libertarian and a free information person, is he created a model for a 3D gun and he put it on the internet, and the government has been trying to squash that information out of fear that, I guess, gangsters are going to get a bunch of single-use firearms instead of buying what they can on the street, buying a very expensive 3D printer to create a gun that I wouldn't pay 50 cents for. The entire argument over it is a freedom argument, and what's got the press scared is I guess no one knew it was already legal to make your own firearms.
Right, so you can make them, you just can't sell them legally.
Unless you have a manufacturer's license, right. So you can make it, you can pass them down to your kids. They have a product which is called an 80% lower. It's actually more expensive than a complete lower. And what a lower is a lower assembly. It is the serialized part of an AR-15. It is the only part of the AR-15 that is a, quote, firearm, end quote. Everything else is an accessory. So you can buy this thing that's machined 80% of the way, machine it the rest of the way, and it is an unserialized firearm that you may own and you may pass down, but you may not go into the business without a license of creating firearms and selling them.
Well, you know what I mean. Listen, as much as we would like to keep, firearms that have not been legally obtained, off the streets, criminals are going to do what criminals do, correct? And so, so if the argument is, keep this gentleman from producing that, or anyone, right? Because if they had the money to buy that, they can make whatever they want, right? And so,
well, no, it's not that. It's that you would have to reinvent the wheel. If you had the 3D printer, you still wouldn't necessarily have the plans. What he's in trouble and he's fighting back against is a First Amendment issue because he's sharing the data, not actually the firearms.
So I mean, okay, I don't see personally anything wrong with him sharing. So he's sharing the data on how he made it. Am I understanding that?
And
right?
the plans, right?
So if I come up with some, I don't know, and it's going to sound silly because I'm trying to use an example, but if I come up with some new profound recipe for beef stroganoff and I share it on the internet, and because Martha Stewart doesn't, I mean, when, to me, when will it stop? And that's just kind of how I feel about, not always legislating anything for people that you may deem that's wrong. Because then you tell me I can't dye my hair because I'm 49, I should let my grays show. Not so much. I can't get a tattoo. I can't. When does it stop? To where we're supposed to be the land of the free, right? And so
let me tell you, if you get elected to the legislature and you have the thought process of when does it stop, you are going to have one hell of a time under the gold dome, because they are constantly trying to legislate everything. And I think, every bill that comes up, there are people who say, why do we need this? Why are we doing this?
Sorry about I just feel like, and that's what I do feel that we lost in great Senator John McCain, is that while he did have his feelings and his opinions, and he was opinionated, may he rest in peace, but he was able to listen, and you could argue with him, and then you could go out to eat with him, and that's what I loved about him. But I am the person that will ask why, and I will continue to ask why, because if you continue to not make sense to me, I'm going to keep on asking you why. And because what's going to happen that when I come home and I see my neighbors and just in my district in Publix or Kroger, they're going to ask me why.
What do you foresee being the biggest obstacle as a state representative? Like, what are you not worried about, but I mean, we have a very toxic political environment. Right now, the Democrats are not in the majority in the legislature. There's so much going on nationally. People are just so divided. So what do you see as being the biggest hurdle if you're elected and serving in the state house?
You know what? And you're absolutely right. There's so much division. And at the end of the day, if we all really think about it, we all really want the same thing. Right? I mean, if we could get as basic to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, we all really want the same things. We want to be able to provide for our families, have healthcare coverage, have economic opportunities, be safe, pursue our dreams, all of those things. We all want those. And I just think that we have to be able to come and reason together. But there's so much I going on. And I think people forget that when you step up to the plate to serve the public, it's not about I. It's really not about Allison. I may be the physical being that goes to sit in that seat under the Capitol dome, but it's not about Allison. It's about every citizen here in House District 19 and every Georgian. And so, but to me, it really is 90% of this stuff is common sense, man. And what are we if I could be so frank, take whatever got stuck up inside of you, take it out. And think about something bigger than yourself. But I don't know where people have lost that, but they really have, and it's a crying shame, honestly.
We had a sitting vice president enter a duel. I don't think it's anything new. It's just every generation comes along, thinks, this is the worst. I mean, before the Civil War, a congressman took his cane and bashed another member of Congress over the head with it. History is one of those stubborn things, and you have to acknowledge it. When we say we're more divisive than ever, we literally went to war with each other and killed hundreds of thousands. It's not as bad as people would have you believe. The American blood has been shed on our soil over political differences, and it's not that bad. What I'm seeing as the resistance, I can tell you, I'm not really afraid. And I know that's sounds like super conservative hyperbole, pounding my chest. It's really not. It's just when Mike Pence and Nancy Pelosi go off across the river somewhere and square off with smoothbore pistols, I'll worry.
You know what? Makes a lot of sense, Dave.
Well, closing thoughts. Allison, you're the guest.
You know what? I really just wish, having seen, and I mean, not just what I've seen on the national front, but even right here in my backyard in House District 19 in Georgia, there is so much division, and if we could get rid of the rhetoric and sit down and know, listen, both of us bleed red, and we all want the same thing. And I really wish that we can come and reason together and leave the partisanships crap, behind, and just lock arms and win. So thank you guys so much for having me here tonight.
Well, thank you for
coming. We loved hearing your perspectives and you sharing your beliefs and why you hold those beliefs. So thank you.
Jessica, your parting wisdom?
My parting wisdom. Yes, see how reasonable people can have conversations when they differ politically. Look at this. Look at this podcast setting an example for the world.
Be quiet.
Don't tell me what to do. So, unfortunately, Matt didn't get to offer any closing thoughts because his house flooded as the podcast happened. So, but hopefully he will get that fixed and without too much damage.
And we will all look forward to hearing how the forum went.
Yes, he has a forum, the public land forum. Will be well and over with by the time we have our next episode. So,
well, I want to tell you guys, October 24th, there will be a candidate forum held in Dallas, Georgia, at Oasis Family Church, 7 p.m. So maybe one of you guys can come out and cover it and bring it to your podcast community.
Awesome.
I thought you were going to say Oasis Good Time. My parting thought is absolutely not political at all. The run ended quickly, but it really was great to have meaningful October baseball in Atlanta again, and it was a fun ride, and I can't wait for spring.
Awesome.
Jessica, Allison, thank you very much.
Thank you guys.
Yes, have a great week. Good luck on the campaign trail, Allison.
And for Matt Lowe, we will see you all next week.